Amanda Lourenço Nunes, born May 30, 1988, is a Brazilian-American professional mixed martial artist. She currently competes in the women's bantamweight division of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC, where she is the former UFC Women's Featherweight Champion and two-time UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion. She was ranked number 1 in the UFC Women's Pound-for-Pound rankings in 2022. Widely regarded as one of the greatest female mixed martial artists of all time, Nunes is the only woman to become a two-division UFC champion and the third fighter to hold UFC titles in two weight classes simultaneously, after Conor McGregor and Daniel Cormier. She is also the only fighter in UFC history to defend two titles in two different weight classes while actively holding them simultaneously. Early life. Nunes was born on May 30, 1988, in Pojuca, a small town outside of Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. She has two older sisters. After her parents split up when she was 4, Nunes and her sisters remained with their mother. To support the family as a single parent, her mom sold hot dogs, sweets, and beauty products alongside her regular job as a school administrative assistant. According to Nunes, her father initially did not support her fighting career, but has since changed course. Nunes has described her mother as a loving but strict parent. She encouraged Amanda to get involved with sports as a way to deal with her excess energy. Nunes initially aspired to become a professional soccer player, starting out in elementary school as a player on the local Pojuca team and later on the Salvador team. Eventually, she got the opportunity to try out for the Vitória Football Club, but was unable to accept due to her mother wanting her to focus on studies instead. Martial arts training. Nunes' uncle was a Vale Tudo fighter. Her mother, who herself regularly trained boxing, cornered him during his fights. Nunes first attended capoeira classes at age 5, after her school teacher complained that she was too hyperactive in class. She started learning karate at age 7. My mother used to box, and I followed her footsteps into training. She loves fighting. My uncle used to Vale Tudo, and my mother even cornered him in some of his fights. She always says, the first strike has to be yours. She can't touch you before you touch her. You have to intimidate her. Amanda Nunes.
At the age of 16, following her sister Vanessa's invitation to a dojo, she began training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. At this time, she also got involved with boxing. Despite being the only woman at the gym, she soon started dominating her training partners in sparring. After she had defeated all of her opposition, at age 17, she moved to Salvador to train at the Edson Carvalho Academy under the tutelage of his brother, Ricardo Carvalho. There, she also started training in judo. She lived in an apartment with her sister, but because it was too far away from the gym, she accepted her coach's offer to move there. Because she was the only girl, and because the logo of the academy are two lions, her coach and other students started calling her Leoa, lioness in Portuguese, a nickname she still uses. I slept on the mat. I woke up at about 4:30 a.m. to clean the whole gym with the coach. There were some other athletes who lived in the gym as well, but there was only me as a woman. We woke up very early to leave the gym clean for the first jiu-jitsu class, which started at 6 a.m. I used to live there, so why not help the coach? That is also a part of fighter's life. Today, when I look back, I think it was very worthwhile to go through all of this. I really liked living at the gym because it was facing Porto de Barra, facing the sea, so I trained, took a shower, went for a walk on the shore, stayed there. It was perfect for me. Amanda Nunes. Nunes soon started competing in BJJ tournaments. Among her biggest accomplishments in this sport are gold medal at the Pan American Jiu-Jitsu Championship in 2008 as a blue belt, gold medal at World Jiu-Jitsu Championship in 2009 as a purple belt, and becoming a world champion of the North American Grappling Association, NAGA, in the lightweight and absolute divisions in 2012. She currently holds a black belt in BJJ and a brown belt in judo. Mixed martial arts career. Nunes made her professional debut on March 8, 2008 at Prime MMA Championship 2. She faced Ana Maria and was defeated by armbar submission in the first round. Strikeforce. Nunes had won 5 straight fights, all by knockout, prior to making her Strikeforce debut on January 7, 2011 at Strikeforce Challengers Woodley vs. Safadim in Nashville, Tennessee. She defeated Canadian Julia Budd by knockout in just 14 seconds. Nunes was scheduled to fight Julie Kedzie at Strikeforce Overeem vs. Werdum on June 18, 2011 in Dallas, Texas. The bout was cancelled after Nunes sustained a foot injury. Nunes fought Alexis Davis on September 10, 2011 at Strikeforce Barnett vs. Karatanov. She lost the fight via TKO late in the second round. In the first round, Nunes started strongly with heavy strikes but quickly faded. By the second round, Nunes was exhausted from the start of the round. While attempting a takedown, she was instantly reversed and Davis was able to obtain full mount to finish Nunes with strikes.
Nunes signed to face Kat Zingano at Strikeforce Melendez vs. Healy on September 29, 2012, but the event was cancelled when Gilbert Melendez, who was set to defend his title against Pat Healy, sustained a knee injury in training that forced his withdrawal from the card. Invicta FC. Nunes was scheduled to face Milana Dudieva at Invicta FC 2, Basler vs. McMahon on July 28, 2012. Dudieva withdrew from the fight due to illness on July 9th, and Nunes was then scheduled to face Leslie Smith instead. Smith also withdrew due to an injury, and Nunes ultimately faced Raquel Paluhi. Nunes won the fight via technical submission due to a rear naked choke in the first round. On January 5, 2013, Nunes returned to Invicta FC to face Sarah Deliao at Invicta FC 4, Esparza vs. Hyatt. Nunes lost the fight via unanimous decision. Nunes was scheduled to face Caitlin Young at Invicta FC 5, Penne vs. Watterson on April 5, 2013. She withdrew due to an arm injury. Ultimate Fighting Championship. Nunes made her octagon debut against Sheila Gaff at UFC 163 on August 3, 2013, in Brazil. She won the fight via TKO in the first round. Nunes made her second UFC appearance when she faced Germaine de Randamie at UFC Fight Night 31 on November 6, 2013. She won the fight via TKO in the first round. For her third fight with the promotion, Nunes was named the injury replacement for Shayna Baszler against Sarah Kaufman at the Ultimate Fighter Nations finale. Nunes later pulled out of the bout with a dislocated thumb. Nunes faced Kat Zingano on September 27, 2014 at UFC 178. After nearly finishing Zingano with punches in the first round, she lost the next round before being finished via TKO in the third round. Nunes faced Shayna Baszler on March 21, 2015 at UFC Fight Night 62. She won the fight via TKO in the first round. Nunes faced Sarah McMahon on August 8, 2015 at UFC Fight Night 73. She won the fight via a rear naked choke submission in the first round after knocking her opponent down with a three-punch combination. Nunes faced Valentina Shevchenko on March 5, 2016 at UFC 196. She won the fight by unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-27, and 29-27. Bantamweight and Featherweight champion. After amassing a three-fight win streak, Nunes earned her first title shot in the UFC. She faced Miesha Tate for the UFC Women's Bantamweight Championship on July 9, 2016 at UFC 200. Nunes stunned Tate early on with knees and punches and then won the fight by submission, rear naked choke, in the first round. Her victory made her the first openly gay UFC champion. On December 30, 2016, Nunes made her first title defense against returning MMA superstar Ronda Rousey in the main event at UFC 207. Nunes won the fight via TKO due to punches 48 seconds into the first round.
For her second title defense, Nunes was scheduled to face Valentina Shevchenko in a rematch at UFC 213 on July 8, 2017. The pair originally fought at UFC 196, with Nunes winning by unanimous decision. Nunes was hospitalized the morning of the fight with chronic sinusitis, and the fight was canceled. Joanna Jedrzejczyk offered to replace Nunes, but the Nevada State Athletic Commission could not clear her on such short notice. Nunes instead fought Shevchenko at UFC 215 on September 9th in Edmonton, Alberta. Nunes won the closely contested fight by split decision. Out of 22 media outlets, 10 scored it for Nunes, 10 for Shevchenko, and 2 scored it a draw. Nunes faced Raquel Pennington on May 12, 2018 at UFC 224. After a dominant performance, Nunes won the fight via TKO in round 5. This was the first UFC event headlined by two openly gay fighters. Nunes moved up in weight to face Chris Cyborg for the UFC Women's Featherweight Championship on December 29, 2018 at UFC 232. Nunes knocked Cyborg out in 51 seconds of the first round to become the new UFC Women's Featherweight Champion. This made her the first woman in UFC to hold championship belts in different divisions simultaneously. This win also earned her the Performance of the Night award. Nunes returned to bantamweight to make her fourth title defense against former champion Holly Holm on July 6, 2019 at UFC 239. She won the fight via knockout in round 1 after dropping Holm with a head kick and following up with punches. This win also earned her the Performance of the Night award. Nunes faced Germaine de Randamie in a rematch on December 14, 2019 at UFC 245 to defend her UFC Women's Bantamweight Championship. After out-grappling her opponent in every round, she won the fight via unanimous decision, 49-44, 49-46, and 49-45. This win meant Nunes had the most wins in women's title fights in the UFC, with 7 such wins. Nunes was expected to face Felicia Spencer on May 9, 2020 at then UFC 250. On April 9th, Dana White, president of the UFC, announced that this event was postponed. The bout eventually took place on June 6, 2020 at UFC 250. Nunes won via unanimous decision, 50-44, 50-44, and 50-45. Nunes was expected to defend her featherweight title against Megan Anderson in December 2020 at UFC 256. It was announced on November 9th that Nunes pulled out due to an undisclosed injury, and the bout was postponed to 2021. The pairing was rescheduled for March 6, 2021 at UFC 259. Nunes won the fight via triangle armbar in round 1. Nunes was expected to defend her bantamweight title on August 7, 2021 against Juliana Pena. Nunes tested positive for COVID-19 on July 29th, and the bout was canceled. The fight was rescheduled and eventually took place at UFC 269 on December 11, 2021. After dominating the first round, Nunes was outstruck in the second round and eventually submitted via rear naked choke, losing her bantamweight championship in a massive upset.
On February 5, 2022, it was announced that Nunes and Juliana Pena will be the coaches for The Ultimate Fighter 30 and ESPN+, and the show featured heavyweight and women's flyweight contestants. A rematch against Juliana Pena for the UFC Women's Bantamweight title took place on July 30, 2022 at UFC 277. Nunes recaptured the title in a 5-round dominant unanimous decision victory over Pena and became the first person in UFC history of either gender to become double champ twice. She also became the first fighter to win a title in the weight class below the one in which they were currently holding the title. Nunes received Fan Bonus of the Night awards paid in Bitcoin of US $30,000 for first place for this fight. Temporary retirement. A trilogy bout was scheduled against Juliana Pena on June 10, 2023 at UFC 289. On May 2, 2023, it was announced that Pena had suffered broken ribs during training camp and would be unable to compete. Irene Aldana agreed to replace Pena at the event. Nunes won the fight via a dominant unanimous decision and announced her retirement from active competition during the post-fight interview. Hall of Fame. During UFC 314's broadcast in April 2025, Nunes was announced as the next Modern Wing UFC Hall of Fame inductee during International Fight Week festivities in Las Vegas that June. Comeback. On June 5, 2025, after spending 2 years in retirement, Nunes announced that she would be returning to the UFC against the winner of Kayla Harrison versus Juliana Pena. Nunes was scheduled to compete for the Bantamweight Championship against current champion Kayla Harrison on January 24, 2026 at UFC 324. However, Harrison withdrew from the bout after being diagnosed with herniated discs in her neck, which required surgery. The fight is expected to be rescheduled for a later date. Personal life. Nunes is the first openly lesbian UFC champion. She is married to former UFC fighter Nina Nunes, Nian Saroff, who competed in the strawweight division. She credits her UFC success to their relationship. On September 24, 2020, her wife gave birth to the couple's first child, a daughter. On November 6, 2023, Nunes announced via Instagram that she and her wife welcomed their second daughter, born on November 1, 2023. In 2019, Nunes was featured in ESPN The Magazine's The Body issue, including an appearance on the cover. Championships and accomplishments. Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC Hall of Fame, Modern Wing, Class of 2025, UFC Women's Bantamweight Championship 2 times, 6 successful title defenses overall, 5 successful title defenses first reign, 1 successful title defenses second reign.
Tied Valentina Shevchenko for most wins in UFC title fights amongst women, 11. Most wins in UFC Women's Bantamweight Championship fights, 8. Most bouts in UFC Women's Bantamweight Championship fights, 9. First woman in UFC to win 2 titles, Bantamweight and Featherweight, and to also hold them simultaneously. First and only UFC fighter to defend titles in 2 divisions while holding both titles simultaneously. 6th multi-divisional champion in UFC, and 3rd to hold 2 titles simultaneously, after Daniel Cormier and Conor McGregor. First and only fighter to retire as multi-division champion in UFC history. 4th longest single UFC title reign of all time, 1,981 days, behind Demetrius Johnson, George St. Pierre, and Anderson Silva. UFC Women's Featherweight Championship, 1 time, 2 successful title defenses. Tied Chris Cyborg for most wins in UFC Women's Featherweight Championship fights, 3. Longest combined UFC title reign of all time, 3,940 days. 2nd most combined title defenses by a woman in UFC history, 8, behind Valentina Shevchenko. Tied Anderson Silva and Valentina Shevchenko for 4th most title fight wins in UFC history, 11. Performance of the night 5 times versus Sarah McMahon, Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Chris Cyborg, and Holly Holm. Tied Ronda Rousey for the 2nd most performance of the night bonuses in UFC women's history, 5. Tied Irene Aldana for 3rd most post-fight bonuses in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 4. 2nd most wins in UFC women's history, 16. Tied Gillian Robertson for most finishes in UFC women's history, 10. Tied Anthony Johnson, Charles Oliveira, and Andrei Arlovski for 5th most first-round finishes in UFC history, 9. Most knockouts in UFC women's history, 7. Most consecutive wins in UFC women's history, 12. Most knockout wins in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 6. Most finishes in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 8. Most consecutive wins in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 9. Most knockdowns in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 6. Most knockdowns in a bout in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 3 versus Juliana Pena 2. Most takedowns in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 32. Most takedowns landed in a bout in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 8 versus Germaine de Randamie. Longest win streak against current, former, or future UFC champions, 8. Tied Chris Cyborg for most consecutive wins in UFC women's featherweight division history, 3. 2nd most bouts in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 15. 2nd most top position time in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 58 minutes 5 seconds. 3rd most significant strikes mended in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 773. 3rd most total strikes landed in UFC women's bantamweight division history, 1,099.
Holds wins over 8 current or former UFC champions: Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Valentina Shevchenko, twice, Holly Holm, Jermaine Durandamy, twice, Chris Hyborg, Juliana Pena, and Raquel Pennington. 5th highest win percentage in UFC history, 88.9%, 16 wins, 2 losses. UFC.com Awards, 2013, ranked 9th Import of the Year, 2018, ranked 2nd Fighter of the Year, and ranked 4th Knockout of the Year versus Chris Cyborg, 2021, ranked 5th Submission of the Year versus Megan Anderson. Yahoo Sports, 2010's Female MMA Fighter of the Decade. The Athletic, 2010's Women's Bantamweight Fighter of the Decade. BJPenn.com, 2010's ranked 8th Fighter of the Decade. Bloody Elbow, 2010's Women's Bantamweight Fighter of the Decade. Forbes, 2016 UFC Fighter of the Year. MMA Junkie, 2015 August Submission of the Month versus Sarah McMahon, 2016 ranked 6th Fighter of the Year, 2018 Female Fighter of the Year, 2019 Female Fighter of the Year, 2010's ranked 6th Fighter of the Decade. Combat Press, 2018 Upset of the Year versus Chris Cyborg, 2018 Female Fighter of the Year, 2019 Female Fighter of the Year. Cageside Press, 2019 Female Fighter of the Year. MMA Weekly, 2018 Knockout of the Year versus Chris Cyborg. Equality California, 2016 Equality Visibility Award. MMADNA.NL, 2016 Female Fighter of the Year, 2018 Female Fighter of the Year. World MMA Awards, 2016 Female Fighter of the Year, 2018 Female Fighter of the Year, 2018 Knockout of the Year versus Chris Cyborg at UFC 232, 2018 Upset of the Year versus Chris Cyborg at UFC 232, 2019 Female Fighter of the Year. Fight Matrix, 2016 Female Fighter of the Year, 2018 Female Fighter of the Year, 2019 Female Fighter of the Year tied with Valentina Shevchenko. CBS Sports, 2016 ranked 5th UFC Fighter of the Year, 2018 UFC Fighter of the Year. The Score, 2016 Fighter of the Year with Cody Garbrandt. Sports Illustrated, 2016 ranked 3rd Fighter of the Year. MMA Fighting, 2022 First Team MMA All-Star.